Today we are building the tallest building in every single country in Europe. And we have now reached the 25 tallest of them all. In the last video we reached the impressive Avast Twist Tower, but by the end of this video we're getting way taller. To start off the top 25, we go to Aarhus, Denmark for the Lighthouse 2.0. If you've watched the first part of this video, you'll know we are reaching some pretty good heights already, and the Lighthouse 2.0 is no different at 142 meters tall. Actually, if you haven't watched part 1, you should definitely go check that one out as well. I mean, I'm glad you're here, but watching a part 2 without watching part 1? You're a little crazy. At number 24 we find the Vasco da Gama Tower in Lisbon, Portugal. A very unique building that started out as a 145 meter tall observation tower built for the '98 World Fair. Of course, this would never have been able to rank for this list was it not for the 22-story hotel that was built right onto the observation tower in 2012. Because of this addition, the combined tower now has over 2/3 of its height as usable floors, while still looking very unique due to the two distinct parts. The observation deck itself was replaced by a panoramic restaurant in 2018 that actually received a Michelin star just a year later. That's some spectacular dining. Then we go to Belgium for the 150 meter tall South Tower in Brussels. Easily the most boring building in the top 25. It serves as government offices and just looks incredibly dull. Then we go to Hungary for a slightly more interesting building. It's the 150 meter tall Mall Campus in Budapest. It was designed by Foster & Partners and completed just last year in 2022. It serves as the headquarters for the Mall Group, hence the name, and it's got this interesting uniform shape going from the big tower to the platform below. I think it looks quite nice. Next up is Lithuania with the 153 meter tall Europa Tower in Vilnius. This was probably the quickest build of this entire video as there was simply not a lot to it. I think it looks very 80s with the orange and dark grey, but it was actually completed in 2004. Slovakia is next with its 168 meter tall Eurovea Tower. Located in Bratislava, this beautiful building structurally topped out at the end of 2022 and only completed just a few months ago. It has a very interesting triangle shape that is just not quite symmetrical, but makes for a very sleek and modern look with the gentle curve along its height. It sits right between the city center and the waterfront of the Danube River in Bratislava, and as its country's first skyscraper, I think it looks really beautiful. Then at 19 we find the Klovsky Descent 7 in Kiev, Ukraine. This 168 meter tall giant was completed in 2012, but to me it looks like it might as well have been from the Soviet era. I honestly think it's a very ugly building, but unfortunately it does not look like Ukraine will be rushing to build any new skyscrapers anytime soon. Until then, the Klovsky Descent will have to stand as the tallest monument to the brave people of Kiev in Ukraine. We then move over to Serbia for the 168 meter tall Belgrade Tower in, of course, Belgrade. Opened also very recently in 2023, this tower features a 90-degree twist around the 14th floor. These two separate parts of the tower, crossing each other above and below the twisting section, are meant to symbolize the confluence of the Sava and Danube rivers that the city is known for. I think that's honestly pretty genius. It was designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, who are actually responsible for several other very iconic buildings around the world. Next we find the Tour Odeon in Monaco at 170 meters tall. Opened not too long ago in 2015, this high-rise houses some of the richest people in the world. In fact, the penthouse on the top floor, spanning 5 floors and over 3,500 square meters, is the single most expensive apartment in the entire world, having been sold for an eye-watering $440 million back in 2016. It is probably best known, however, for being the most clickbait apartment ever built, with a water slide right on top of the tower. All in all, I think it's a beautiful tower that truly encapsulates the grandeur and extravagance of Monaco. At number 16 we find the 170 meter tall One, also known as One Limassol in, you guessed it, Limassol, Cyprus. According to their website, it's the tallest residential seaside tower in Europe. It's definitely not the tallest residential building, but apparently the tallest one that is right on the seaside. So, sure. It's a nice building though. Next on the list we find the Turning Torso in Malmö, Sweden. This is a really iconic building and not quite the easiest to build. It's 191 meters tall and has this iconic 90-degree twist throughout its height. It was designed by famous architect Santiago Calatrava, and as pretty much all of his builds, it ended up going way over budget. I do really love his architectural style though. It's very dynamic and natural, while obviously at the same time being clad in very modernistic white and concrete textures. This particular building was actually based on an artwork of his, which in turn, as the name implies, was based on a twisting human torso. Then at number 14 we have the 202 meter tall Sky Fort in Sofia, Bulgaria. This building is currently still under construction, but it is topped out as of the making of this video. I really like the open bit towards the top, which houses a restaurant and observation deck. And although it was quite hard to get all these curves in nicely, I think it worked out pretty well. Then another one of the most boring buildings on this list, at number 13, it's the Roche-Turmbau 2 in Basel, Switzerland. This is the kind of building you could totally build in your survival world, as it's just all rectangular all the way to the top. Although at least it has some of these step backs along the way, making it just a little bit more interesting to look at. At the number 12 spot we find the 215 meter tall Zalmhaven in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Rotterdam definitely being the skyscraper capital of the Netherlands, it houses all 6 of the country's skyscrapers over 150 meters. And this is the tallest of them all. It's a residential tower that opened just last year in 2022, and it's a fairly simple but quite nice looking building in my opinion. Then we go to Milan, Italy for the 218 meter tall Unicredit Tower. And this one is a little bit of a cheater, because the roof of this building is actually at 152 meters, but a near 70 meter tall spike lifts the building to the top spot in its country. But the thing is that it's not just an antenna, but an actual integral part of the building, as it extends the glass facade of the tower upwards along the spike, and therefore it is generally considered as a valid part of the architectural height. And yeah, we're gonna see a bit more of this in the top 10 as well, but I've always tried to use the ranking of their highest architectural point, so it's a bit weird and maybe not always fair, but you're gonna have to deal with it either way. Then we go to Vienna, Austria, where we find the 220 meter tall DC Tower 1. And this is low-key one of my favorite buildings. 3 of its sides are just flat and straight, like your standard boring skyscraper, but the front is divided into 10 separate slices that each follow alternating angles up the building's height. So I used some different colors of concrete as I was building this, because otherwise it's just really hard to see the differences in the layers. And in the end I ended up alternating the layers between black stained glass and grey stained glass to emphasize the shapes a bit more. When in reality, of course, the whole thing is just made out of the same type of glass cladding. But yeah, I really like the way this turned out. Next up is the 231 meter tall Tour First in Paris, France. A tower that actually spent most of its life so far being a lot shorter. Originally built in 1974, the tower was only 159 meters tall at the time. It wasn't until 2007 that work began on a massive refurbishment. The slanted sections on the three sides of the tower were added and the height was increased by an incredible 72 meters. The look of the building was also dramatically changed by cladding the entire building in glass, giving it the look it has today. At number 8 we find the Warsaw Tower in Warsaw, Poland at 236 meters tall. Designed by Foster & Partners, it was completed in 2022, with the observation deck at the top expected to open in 2024. The owners of this tower claim it to be the tallest building in the EU at 310 meters tall, and that would have made it the number 2 on this list. But this is only because of its radio antenna on the roof. This antenna is entirely removable, so I've decided not to count it towards its architectural height, leading to a height of 236 meters. Next up is the 237 meter tall Baku Tower in Baku, Azerbaijan. Definitely the most fun thing about this building is the crazy steel artwork around its base. I'm pretty sure it's just purely aesthetic, but yeah, it looks kinda cool, I guess. For its architectural height, I once again left out the removable antenna on top, and apart from some of the interesting architectural shapes at the top and the bottom of the building, it's just not the prettiest building. Then we go to Batumi, Georgia for the Batumi Tower, or officially the Batumi Technical University Tower. It is a very weird tower, clad in glass and concrete, and the patterns seem to be different in almost every picture I found, so it was really hard to accurately recreate it. But definitely the weirdest thing about the tower is the fact that it houses a golden Ferris wheel at over 100 meters above the ground, which sounds cool, except it has never seemed to be operational. Also, the technical university that it was supposed to house ended up never actually existing, and the tower stands empty to this day. Next up is the 249 meter tall Torre de Cristal in Madrid, Spain. This is one of those perfect Minecraft towers, with 45-degree slanted sections that are just so satisfying to build in the game. It was actually surprisingly difficult to verify that this was in fact the tallest building in Spain. The Torre Cespa, which is right next to it, is claimed by Wikipedia to be 1 meter taller. However, once I started looking into it, I found almost all other sources to claim that the Torre de Cristal is actually 70 centimeters taller than the Torre Cespa. So it wasn't really clear which one was actually taller, but I went with what most sources seem to claim. At number 4, we find the 259 meter tall Commerzbank Tower, the centerpiece of Germany's most iconic skyline. With an astonishing 19 out of the country's 20 tallest buildings situated in Frankfurt, this one is the king of them all. With its triangular shape allowing for indoor gardens, natural air circulation and efficient heating and cooling, this was actually one of the world's first so-called ecological skyscrapers. At 9 different levels throughout the building, one of the 3 sides opens up to form a large indoor atrium and garden. This also means that the offices in the other 2 sides of the building always have a view of either the city or the garden. The Skyland office tower in Istanbul takes the third place on the podium. It's actually Skyland towers in plural, as there's a second one almost identical to the one I'm building here, right next to it, as well as a slightly shorter hotel tower in the same style. The tower comes in at an impressive 285 meters. There's one other tower in Istanbul that reaches 301 meters, but it only does so because of its antenna, which is not architecturally part of the building, so we're not gonna count that. Also, the Skyland towers won't hold their title very long anyway, as construction is currently underway for the new Turkish bank tower, which will be an incredible 70 meters taller, 352 meters. But for now, the Skyland tower still stands proud as Turkey's tallest building. The runner-up on this list, the number 2 of Europe, is the United Kingdom with the Shard in London. This was a surprisingly complicated build. When I looked online if anyone had attempted to build it before, I found that the vast majority of builders just build it as a 4-sided glass pyramid. And I mean, I get it, from a distance that definitely approximates the shape, but it really isn't that easy when we look at it critically. The pyramid for this tower actually has up to 10 different faces in different angles that sometimes even change halfway through. Ultimately, this led to a bunch of measurements from the structural drawings and then calculations to the Minecraft domain to end up with one of my favorite builds in this entire list. I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. Of course, you can now also start to see where the tower got its name, as English Heritage called it a shard of glass through the heart of historic London. Legend has it that whoever pulls it out again will be the one true king. Then the number 1, the tallest building in Europe, is perhaps a little bit of a controversial one. The 462 meter tall Lakta Center in St. Petersburg is the head office of Gazprom, the fossil giant with very close ties to Putin and his regime. The building, opened in 2019, is the northernmost skyscraper in the world and the second tallest twisted building in the world. What made this one particularly difficult to build was that it wasn't just twisted regularly along its center, which is obviously hard enough already to recreate in Minecraft, but it's actually made of 5 square sections going up its length that each rotate 90 degrees along their own individual axis while simultaneously being tapered and bowed towards the center. So this crazy geometry basically forced me to take a very systematic approach to even have a chance of approximating these shapes, which is why you see me drawing out some angles and shapes on the ground next to the tower and making notes on what angle each section is at every now and then. But ultimately I think I did manage to get the rough shape of the tower in, even though it did require a lot of cleaning up towards the end, as the Worldedit rotate tool just isn't quite perfect. But yeah, it's just so incredibly massive that you don't even really notice any small imperfections in the shape. And honestly, I think the design of the tower itself is just really genius. The way the 5 sections twist into each other is just so organic and satisfying, and in a purely architectural sense, I definitely think it deserves to stand as the tallest building in Europe. So that wraps up the tallest building in every country in Europe. Let me know in the comments below which of these you like best, or have I missed any buildings in any of the countries. Also let me know what you want me to build next. I'm planning on doing one of these lists for every continent, so if there's any continent you want me to do first, don't be shy and leave a comment below. And of course, in the meantime, I will also be continuing my Las Vegas project and some other projects as well. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.